It up, starting it up. All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to our second Google Hangout. So a couple things about what's going on here. So before we get into what's going on, I'm going to talk a little bit about what this is and what the future of this is going to be. So we had a bunch of people watch the video since it was originally recorded last month. And after kind of sitting back and thinking about it, I decided, hey, this is something cool. We should do this every month. And that was kind of the original idea, but I wanted to see kind of the reaction we got. I got some feedback from some friends who watched things. And the other cool thing is I had a bunch of cool people like Rob reach out to me and be like, hey, I want to help out with this. So the goal is, or the plan is now moving forward, that this is going to be a monthly event. We're going to do a live stream once a month and have people from different disciplines come on and things like that, and talk to people and answer questions. I'm also going to create a Facebook event or a Facebook page that'll allow people to easily be notified of when things are happening and where things are happening. So yeah, let me quickly open up the Google event so I can see the chat. Or Facebook page. Oh man. So yeah, now I can see the chat, and we're going to get into some questions after I introduce the amazing Rob Coble. So first off, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Grant Shonkwiler. I'm a producer at Fortnite, at Epic Games, working on a game called Fortnite. You may have seen our awesome announced trailer of another game we're working on called Paragon this past weekend, and we're all very excited about that. I've been in the industry for almost 8 years, worked at a bunch of different places, done a bunch of different jobs, and so hopefully I can share some of my knowledge that I've gained. So let me introduce Rob Coble. Rob and I met when I was a student of Full Sail. He was the career development advisor for the game development program, and he really got me into games. Simply put, he got me a bunch of my first interviews, and he got me an interview with the people who would eventually become my first employer. And throughout the years, he has been an incredible friend and mentor, and given me great advice on games and the industry and things like that. So yeah, without further ado, Rob, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Grant. I appreciate the kind words. Sounds like I'm getting back a little bit. So anyway, I'll try to see what I can do to figure that out. But hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. And Grant, I really appreciate your efforts in order to educate the next generation of game developers and people that are interested in getting a career in games. A quick background on myself. I worked in career services at Full Sail University for 11 years, and I am currently working for a casino game company called Every, which is our main game studios based in Austin, Texas. We also have studios in both in Reno and Chicago. We're actively recruiting game developers right now. We're especially looking for mathematicians at all 3 studios. So if anybody is interested or knows somebody that is a mathematician, we can certainly talk offline about that. My background was actually in the music industry. I did that for probably more years than most of you have been alive. And when I came to Full Sail, I got the opportunity to get involved by advising students in game development on how to get jobs in the industry. And that escalated not only into a job advising, but I was also the main liaison to the game industry. So I got to meet people from studios all across the United States, and I absolutely love the game industry, and this is where I plan to stay. So it's really good to be here, man.
Awesome. Thank you again, Rob, for being here. So without further ado, we're going to get into the questions. So we have a bunch of questions from the Facebook event. If you want to ask a question in the YouTube page in the chat, go ahead and do that, and I'll be looking at those and pulling those questions in after we go through the ones that were already submitted.
Hey, by the way, I'm looking at the chat right now, and I think I'm the only one that has typed anything so far. Do you see anything on yours? Am I just not getting it? Or?
So yours was the chat between you and I. So if you go to the actual YouTube page, you can see the what's going on there.
Send me that link, will you?
Yeah, I can send you the link. Yeah, a bunch of people have already sent questions in.
Awesome.
And that's super cool. And we're going to start with the questions that are really kind of related to what we are specifically here to talk about, which is resumes, interviews, and things like that. So we're going to start with those. We have a few other questions that have come in, just general getting into the industry questions, some similar to the ones we answered last month. We'll get to those as the night goes on as well. So first one from Karsten Davis. This is a great opener here, which is there any best practices to getting your resume noticed?
Yeah, definitely so. So I think, a lot of people are going to tell you that it's good to specify or create a resume specific to the job that you're hiring or that you're applying to. Probably to be a little bit more focused on that, especially with people that are entry level. They don't have necessarily a lot of different things that they can put on their resume. So it might tend to be easier just to rearrange your bullet points so that the most appropriate and applicable tasks or skills are the ones that jump off the page. The other thing that I think is really important, and probably the biggest mistake that I see most people do, is a lot of people will tell me what they did, but they don't really go into too much detail on how they did it. So I recommend that, if your bullet point is you worked on AI for a game, be a little bit more specific and talk about specifically how you built the AI for the game. Was there a certain algorithm that you used or a certain technique or something like that? But, don't just tell me what you did, reiterate how you did it. And it's important that you reiterate the skill or the technology. Many companies these days use automated tracking for resumes that they receive. And let's say we're looking for a Java programmer. If Java doesn't just, if the computer doesn't see Java on that resume a couple of times, it's probably going to kick it right back out. And even though you might be good at Java, you're not going to have an opportunity to talk to them. Because unfortunately, they're going to go by, if they don't know you, they're going to go by what it says on that resume.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I don't really have too much to add, to be honest. It's really about making sure you have things on your resume that are things you want to talk about and that will make you look excellent when you talk about them, right? You want to sound really smart when you talk about the things on your resume, and you don't want to have something on there that you maybe worked on for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and you just gave advice on, and then they're like, talk to me about this, and you're like, nope. So yeah, you want to definitely sound intelligent and have things on there that you're proud of and you want to talk to. Super good advice there.
Let me add something else as well, and especially for when dealing with people or with students or people that are still in school. Most of you have actual relevant experience in game development through school projects and things like that. But it's those additional things that you do on the side that really make a difference too. Those are the projects that show a lot of passion. So, if you're building a particle editor on your own away from school, or you're learning a new scripting language or something like that, even if the project isn't, the greatest thing that's ever been programmed, the fact that you're out there doing it and creating something and learning something on your own is a bonus to all recruiters. We like to see that extracurricular activity. And that doesn't just include your projects. That also includes your involvement in the community. Are you an active member of IGDA? Do you attend the game dev drink ups? Do you get involved with the various social events and game jams and stuff like that that are going on in town? Those are all great experiences, and every developer or recruiter or hiring manager I've ever spoken to will tell you the same. The problems that you solve building games in your garage are oftentimes the same problems that you solve when you're working at a studio. So you might not think of it as any big deal, but it is.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. So yeah, let's go into the next question then. Robert Martinez asks, developers, architects, and and artists, designers conceptualize and create. So does the developer, architects, author, artists and designers conceptualize and create? Each of these roles can showcase their talents with tangible assets. How would you suggest producers and project managers showcase their talents?
So understanding how games are made are important, and I think obviously that's what a producer does. And this is really good advice for even for the devs out there, or the artists as well. Your ability to let somebody know that you know what a development cycle is, or a milestone is extremely important. You know, when you're making a game with a company, you're going to have deadlines, and you're going to have to be timely, and you're going to have to do whatever it is. So your ability to explain that, and to explain that you work well with others, is extremely important. For a producer role, I would think, you know, obviously they're looking for leadership qualities. Have you ever run a meeting? And if so, what methodologies have you used to run your team? You know, are you doing these meetings on a daily basis, or are you just throwing darts at a board? You know, they want to see that you're organized. They want to see that you're willing to get down there in the trenches with them. Avoid on your resume, especially, and in your cover letter, using things, first person pronouns. You don't want to do a lot of I's. I did this, I did that. No, it's we did this. A good leader is somebody that leads by example and is not afraid to get down there in the trenches with the guys. So you want to be real careful, you know, about making it look like, you know, this game came about because of my great skills. You're just the glue that's holding everything together, and oftentimes, you know, forging the path through the woods that is going to help everybody get to the end. So be mindful of that.
Yeah, being a producer is really interesting for just the resume side of things, right? Because you have to get that foot in the door. Once you've shipped a few games, it's a lot easier, because people want to see that on your resume. If you're looking at anything above an AP position, it's like, have you shipped games? If you have, you know, kind of, here's the game I shipped. Here's a little information about the game as far as like what we did to get it out on time, on budget, whatever things you tackled there. But you know, one of the main things is when I read a resume from a producer, it better be the best resume I get. Not with the content, but it better have 0 errors in it as far as spelling, grammar. The way it's formatted should be easy, because your job is communication as a producer. It's all communication, and you know, there are other things you do within it, but if you can't communicate, you can't lead. If you can't communicate, you can't inspire. If you can't communicate, you can't be mean and tell people they have to hit a deadline. So it really is all about that communication. So you need to make sure that your resume is flawless. Run it by a bunch of people. You want to put as many of the games that you've worked on in any role on your resume, and talk about, you know, again, the things that you did with your team, like what Rob was talking about. You want to put the different methodologies you've used, any software you're familiar with. If you have any experience in anything else like programming or design, which are what my background is when I came into production, those are all valuable to put on there as well. It definitely is a little weird because you don't have like an art portfolio or anything like that to look at. But it really is about what you've done for your team, and to be able to have that conversation about that stuff. Cool. Okay, Grant Snyder, love your first name, Grant. Sent in a pretty long question. And there was actually some conversation happening on the Facebook event about this question, which is what makes me like it. So it's kind of long. I'm going to read through the whole thing, and then just because I think the context is important. So I had an in-person interview at a game studio about a month ago. The interview seemingly went pretty well. The position is a contract to hire position and was being handled by a local recruitment agency. Totally cool. So it's been a month, and I've been in contact with my recruiter multiple times to get updates on the position and see if they've come closer to making a decision. Normally, this wouldn't bug me so much, but the recruiter I'm working with in particular has not once met his promises on when he would get back in touch with me. He has stated via email multiple times that I should have feedback for you next week. I should have feedback for you later today or first thing tomorrow. Sorry for the delays, et cetera, et cetera. Guess what? I've never heard back. I guess the most frustrating part isn't even the fact that I don't know what's going on with the position, but more so the fact that this recruiter is terrible at keeping their word, and it's quite frustrating trying to work with that. Any advice, words of wisdom?
Easy one. Get a new recruiter. Yeah, that's, you know what, for me, and this, you know, in a much grander scale, you know, communication is the key, man. Communication is the key to everything. And I'll give you an example. Back in my music days, when I ran an office for Universal, I had a really great sales rep that, unfortunately, we eventually had to let him go. And it wasn't so much that he wasn't a good guy and he wasn't getting stuff done and everything, but he wouldn't communicate. So a lot of times people would ask him to do something and he would do it, but it might take a week because he was trying to get answers from other people. But the problem that he had was he never kept people involved in the process. So after a couple of days went by, most people would assume that he wasn't doing anything about it because he hasn't gotten back to them, when all he had to do was, you know, send a quick email or a text or something saying, you know, hey, I'm still waiting to hear back from so-and-so. I haven't forgotten about you. That would have, you know, mitigated a lot of the problems right there. So, you know, and unless, you know, your company is under contract with this guy and you have to use him, I'd find somebody that's going to be a little bit more responsive. Or I would at very least have a talk with them and start out, you know, if you're paying this guy money to work on your behalf, then he's got to follow the guidelines of which you set. And that doesn't mean that you pick up the phone and start screaming and yelling at him. That's how they did it in the music business, by the way. But you can pick up the phone and say, hey, man, you know, document your steps. You know, I spoke to you last Friday and this is what you told me. And before that, I spoke to you on, you know, 4 days before that, and this is what you told me. And I'm not getting any feedback or satisfaction. I've got jobs here that need to be filled. So, yeah, I mean, you know, there's a way to talk to people when you have disagreements and whatnot, as long as you're calm and factual, you know, with your communication and lay out your expectations, that, you know, this is a hired employee. Just like if you had an employee that was working for you that wasn't, you know, meeting the mark, you're going to try and work with them and bring them up to speed and help them get to where they need to be. If it doesn't happen after that, well, then you've got performance issues that you're going to have to make a decision about.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add, Grant, is try contacting the company directly. You know, at this point, you know, if your recruiter isn't doing it for you and you still are interested in the position, it's worth, if you have anyone that you know there, contacting them and saying, hey, I haven't heard anything back and I don't know if the block is you guys or if the block is the recruiter. It's worth going through. But yeah, Rob's definitely right. This guy's working for you, and recruiters make their money off of people getting hired. So, you know, he's not doing a good job. Or she, the person is not doing a good job.
There you go. Gender neutral.
Yeah. The next question is from Zach Lyle. He kind of has two questions here with a little bit of setup. I'll be graduating in less than 2 weeks, and I've been finalizing my portfolio, getting in touch with contacts, etc. Something I've been seriously considering is the simulation industry for a number of reasons. Orlando is the capital of simulation, and I already have several contacts available to me. However, my dream is ultimately to contribute to video games. My questions are, how many people do you know in the industry that have a background in something that isn't specifically games?
Wow, lots. Yeah, I mean, simulation is, I mean, myself included, right? So simulation is a very good way to get the experience that a lot of game companies require. You know, you need to, here's the thing. I mean, a lot of simulation companies are using the exact same technology that the game companies are using. So you're going to find a lot of Unreal, a lot of Unity. You know, obviously you're writing in C++ and you know, various scripting languages that you're also going to find in gaming. So it's a great way to get the experience that you're looking for. Now, a lot of times though, people will go into a programming job outside of gaming and lose contact with all of their gaming contacts, and that's not good. And that's something that you want to keep in mind as far as networking goes. It's something that you do always, not because you have to, but because you're a valued part of this industry. So if you go to the simulation world and you start, you know, working on a simulation or doing something other than games, it's probably good that you keep your head in the game world, not only from a networking point of view, but work on a side project as well, and make sure that you're, you know, documenting and talking about that along the way so that people see you still have your head in the game. It's not a bad thing at all. In fact, I know a lot of people that went into simulation or went into indie games or went into casino games or casual games that ended up at AAA companies. In fact, there's a guy I know named Grant Shonkwiler that started out working on, you know, tabletop coin-operated games and got a lot of great experience and really built a huge network of friends and contacts in the industry. So when the time was right and he was ready, he already had people waiting for him. So yeah, and now subsequently, let me just add one other thing. A lot of people go into simulation or casino or whatever and absolutely love it. And it's a great, you can have a great career. The quality of life is fantastic. You have an opportunity to, you know, work 40 hours a week. And if you want to work on your own games on the side, most companies are cool with that. So, you know, there's a lot of positives about doing that. So you owe it to yourself to look into all options and all opportunities. Having 2 or 3 years experience working at a Sims company is going to make you that much more attractive to an Epic or to a Rockstar or something, as long as, you know, you're able to articulate the types of things you did.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, as Rob said, when I was in school, I didn't know that I wanted to make casual games, but I learned that I wanted to make casual games, and I went in and made casual games for a while, and I absolutely loved it. And I can tell you, I learned more because of the size of the studio and what we were doing there than I ever would have learned at a AAA studio in 3 years. You know, the amount of knowledge and things that I had to learn just because there wasn't anybody else to do the job was crazy. Zach, I will say, you know, I would agree with Rob 100%. You know, if it's something you're interested in, but don't feel, if you're kind of just like, oh, this is something that I could do, you know, the options are there, but I really want to go do X, Y, and Z. You know, you can still try 6 or months even to try and get into a game studio, and if you can't, then try and get into a simulation studio. But, you know, as Rob said, if it's something you're interested in, it is a great opportunity. It's a great place there in Orlando. And your second question was about, is it challenging to transition? Yeah, I mean, there's challenges. Rob talked about the getting hired challenges. I wouldn't say that they're super extreme. If anything, it helps you. The main challenges would just be the lifestyle is different, right? Games tend to not be 40 hours. Simulation tends to be a 9-to-5 job or a 10-to-6 job. Games, I mean, at Epic, people work whenever they want. You know, we had a guy, I got in today, and he had been there since 5 a.m. and he left at like noon. I have another guy that comes in at like 5 and works until like 3 in the morning. So it's a different vibe, you know. You got guys going around on scooters with slippers on and pajama pants compared to people a little more business casual. So the transition would be more of a lifestyle than a work thing. And the other thing is, I find most people that have transitioned tend to say games, you work way faster. Your deadlines are tighter. Your money isn't quite as much. Not necessarily personally the money you're getting, but the company may not be getting a lot of upfront money as opposed to in simulation where you tend to have government money, and so you can go a little bit longer. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I mean, simulation definitely tends to be a little bit slower.
Yeah. They got that money, that government money. You're paying yourself essentially.
Yeah.
So Maurice Johnson asks a few questions here. Do recruiters prefer the bullet style of resume formatting, explaining what your technical expertise in the field that you're applying for, or do they prefer you explaining the projects that you have, game credits in, and maybe a few sentences on what you contributed to those projects?
Both. No, again, I think it's important that you frame your bullet points within the boundaries of the project. So, you know, I would advise, or I used to advise the Full Sail students that, you know, they had at least two projects that they could talk about, right? A final project and what we called an SGP project. So, you know, the final project, it was a game. It had a name. So you don't call it final project. You call it the name of the game, you know. Super Mario Brothers wasn't, you know, referred to as a fun project we did, you know, in the garage, whatever. It was like Super Mario Brothers. So it's the same thing. And then you can establish the template by which you worked, which in this particular case would be, you know, a first-person shooter developed in a 5-month cycle on a team of 6 programmers or something like that, right? Now you've got the framework set. You've established in the recruiter's eyes that you understand what a development cycle is and that you can work with others. Then you go into your bullet points. And again, and I can't stress this enough, this is what I did. This is how I did it, okay? You programmed the camera system utilizing the Bezier curve, whatever the hell that means, okay? So again, be specific, utilize the technology or reiterate the technology or the technique that was used when you talk about how you did what you did. Bullet points make it easier for people to find what they're looking for. So if you have one big paragraph that's all jumbled together, it's not going to pop off the page as much. So, you know, again, you know, if it does make it to a recruiter and it gets through the automated software, you know, recruiters tend to spend anywhere from 7 to 10 seconds per resume. I've been doing it for so long now that I can look at a resume and determine in 5 seconds if it's worth me even continuing to look. So a lot of how you present that resume in its format, the usability of the resume, so to speak, you know, is it easy for me to find the different sections and what I'm looking for? That's the first thing that people make their determination on. And that says a lot about you as a person. We want to know, did you take the time to craft a presentable resume, or did you throw it together real quick in hopes that, you know, somebody would, you know, did you throw it together real quick and say a prayer in hopes that somebody would call you?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's really interesting about this question that you had, Maurice, is that you really can do both, right? Like it's important to, as Rob said, have an in-depth section about your projects, and then bullet point or list your just your skills. I'm actually, because there were some good questions about resumes here, and I wanted to just pop open my resume, my last resume. So this is not updated since my current position. But you can kind of see how I did a multi-part thing here where, I have my professional experience, my email and stuff, my website up top. Contact information should always come first, then your professional experience. And please don't copy my format. You can do whatever you want, but this is just kind of showing you the information here. And then I had the skills section, which is kind of what you were talking about, Maurice, where I kind of list out the different skills. And then this is just random info. Obviously I play rugby. And so that was kind of my way of doing both parts that Rob had talked about. Rob and I have workshopped my resume probably 100 times over the years. And this is the, probably 50th or 60th iteration. So if anybody wants to look at that resume, obviously it's old. It doesn't have my current position on there, but it's at my website. You can go look at it there.
Can I add something real quick? Throw the resume back up there for a second, if you would.
Sure.
The thing, and I'll tell you, just briefly what I really like about it. This resume is so tidy. It's real neat. The sections are labeled clearly, so I can see, I know where to look for the things that I'm looking for. It's specific to the things that he worked on. He's reiterating certain processes and technology, mentioning a lot of those buzzwords and things that makes them, pop out of the page. There's a lot. I love the additional information section at the bottom, and there's a lot of good, interesting things. Now, some people might look at this and say, like, rugby player, 8 years of concert show production and sound engineering. What does that have to do with game development? Well, maybe directly it doesn't have a lot to do with it, but the thing that I like about it is it shows me that this is a real person. This is a person that has life, and he's got some life experiences, hopefully, that he can bring to the team. He's going to be an interesting person and be able to talk about things during the day-to-day other than games. Yeah, we love making games, but, a lot of times I'll talk to people and they'll be like, and the first thing I'll say is, so tell me about yourself. And they'll be, well, I, started making games when I was 2, and I love games, and I play games while I eat, and I think about games, and I dream about games. And it's kind of like, all right, I get it. You're a gamer, but you know what? We need somebody who's well-rounded, somebody that has life experiences. There was a guy a while back that interviewed, this was back when I first started. He interviewed at Midway, and he went on to work at LucasArts as a technical designer. Was a great guy and had, a lot to offer as a game developer. But one of his extracurricular things, he had 2 things that really stood out. He was a singer-songwriter, and he did a lot of like coffee nights at, coffee house nights and stuff at various little coffee houses and whatnot. And he was also involved with community theater in his home where he grew up. So the people that interviewed him thought that was fascinating, that here was a guy that got out and did all these other artsy things. And they especially liked the fact that he was involved with acting and putting on these productions. Think about what goes into putting on a play, not only from a production standpoint, but if you're an actor, you understand human emotion, or you should, and you're thinking about the different human emotions and things like that. And they thought, wow, what a better trait. There's no better trait to have for a designer than somebody that understands the human condition. And that was one of the reasons they talked to him. Now, he still had to show them that he was a good technical guy afterwards, which he was. But oftentimes your character is what's going to give you the opportunity to show off those personal traits or those good professional traits or those good technical skills. So lead with you being the good person that you are, and that's going to give you a lot more opportunity to show off your technical prowess.
Yeah, for sure. What's really interesting is I'm looking at this resume, which I haven't looked at since I got this job, and this was kind of tuned to the position that I ended up getting here at Epic a little bit. But even looking at this, there are things that I'm like, oh man, I should change X, Y, and Z and change the wording just a little bit. So it's a constant thing. And one of the things I always jokingly say with people is like, I haven't done it clearly lately, but well, I have, but I haven't put it up on my website. But every few months, I actually go through and I update my resume for a couple reasons. One, it makes me think about what I'm actually doing, because I've been at Epic for a year and a half now. I may not necessarily remember what I did that was super cool a year ago. And then on top of that, luckily I'm at a position that isn't this way, but at a company that isn't this way. But the industry can be volatile, and companies shut down all the time, and people get laid off all the time. So if you don't have to go through that stress every time of rebuilding your resume and portfolio, it makes life a lot better.
Be prepared.
Always be prepared. Yes.
Plus, you never know. I mean, it's just good to have. You never know when. I'm expecting Bill Gates to walk up to Grant anytime now, and damn, you better have a resume ready if he asks for it, right?
Yeah, definitely. It really, and the crazy thing about it is, so I, as Rob kind of mentioned, I didn't actually apply for the job when I went to ID. I was recruited into that position from a friend of both Rob and mine, actually. And, she was like, hey, I really want you to, interview for this position. And I was like, okay. And luckily my resume was in good enough shape that I think Rob and I had one back and forth on it before I sent it over there. And she was like, oh, I expected this like a month later, not a couple days later. So it also shows that you are an efficient person when someone calls, when John Carmack calls, you say, yes, sir. It's just the way it is. When Sweeney calls, you say, yes, sir, I'll come work for you. So it's good to be prepared for stuff like that. Cool. So some of the later questions here tend to not be resume oriented. That's why I wanted to jump in and look at that really quickly. So JDB said, I'm excited to say that I am being flown out to an on-site interview with a great company in Iowa. Congratulations. They're flying me out on Sunday. I stayed for the night. The interview is on Monday, and they fly me home on the 3 p.m. outbound flight. Could you please talk about what I or someone in my situation might expect from what is probably going to be 4 very hurried hours of an on-site interview? That is quick.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of ways that you could look at it. If they're only giving you 4 hours, maybe they already feel like they know you enough and they just want to make sure. But, never let your guard down. Always be prepared. You, by this point, should have a pretty good understanding and know the company that you're going to interview. You've already interviewed with them. I'm sure you've done your due diligence. You've researched. Get to understand and know who the players are. Who are you going to be talking to? Be prepared and anticipate the things that they're going to want to talk to you about. Don't let the time factor mess with your mind. Just do what you got to do. And since you've already impressed them enough to get flown out and to get an in-person interview, my advice would be to dance with the partner you came with. Just keep doing the same things, but don't feel rushed. If you get whiteboarded or something like that and you need to answer the questions, take your time, do a thorough and good job. Be friendly. Make sure you have extra copies of your resume and your business cards with you, because you're going to probably meet a lot of people. I would also anticipate there being some kind of group meeting where you will either go to lunch with or sit down with a whole group of people. If that's the case, make sure you don't devote all your time talking to just one person. Make sure you pay attention to everybody in the room. Spread the love around. Don't treat, the boss as any more important than the programmer that's sitting next to him. Spread it around, address everybody, be polite, be courteous, and most of all, be prepared, man. That's why I would tell one of my favorite lines was, don't be scared, be prepared.
Yeah, I think Rob hit the nail on the head. Make sure you know your resume and what you want to talk about that's on your resume. It seems fast, but I'm sure the company does it all the time, so they know exactly how much time they want to spend with a candidate. I've been in 9-hour interviews. I've been in 4-hour interviews. It really just depends on the company. People can get what they need in the amount of time that they're scheduling with you. One quick story about lunch. Lunch really is super important. When I interviewed at ID, I remember going to lunch and I sat with what eventually would become my team and the guys that I ended up producing for 3 years, specifically a small group of 5 guys who I worked with the whole time I was there. And I was talking to them during lunch and I said something. I don't even remember what it was, but it was like a joke. And on my first day, 2 months later, one of the guys walks up and he's like, "Dude, you're the blah, blah, blah guy." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You told this joke at lunch about Harry Potter." It was an appropriate joke, FYI. Don't tell inappropriate things. And I was like, "Oh, cool." He's like, "That's why I voted for you. I remembered you." And I was like, "If this dude's a producer and he's funny, that would be cool." But that wasn't me putting on acts, right? Or putting on airs. I was literally just being who I am. And I think that's really important, right? They already like you if they're paying to fly you out. So be you. Don't try and be who they need when it comes to personality, because the last thing you want to do is act like something, get in, and then have to act that way for the next 5 years.
Yeah. Amen. Amen to that. I mean, people want to work with real people, and you're not going to always agree on everything and whatnot, but, it's okay to have opinions. Just don't be overly opinionated. How you present your opinions is one thing. Another thing that I like to say, when you're on a job interview, the main thought that is going through somebody's head at all times is, could I stand to sit next to this person for 10 hours a day and not want to strangle him or kill myself? So if you're a good person, if you're, treating people respectfully, you've got something to offer, you know what you're doing, you meet the requirements of the job and whatnot, the professional guy that can do all of those things will get picked every time over the superstar tech guy that can't communicate or get along with anybody. Fact.
Yep, 100%. I think we answered your question kind of there about what a follow-up interview would be like and things to avoid. We kind of hit on that stuff. So thank you for your question. Sean Korb asked a couple rather long questions. We'll go through them. Rob and I both know Sean. Okay. I recently went to ITSEC, which those of you who don't know is a huge military simulation conference in Orlando. It was so amazing, and I got to shake hands and meet a ton of new contacts. My questions are: when at a conference of such like this, what's the best way to approach a booth and not just jump right into, are you hiring? I was torn between, I didn't want to waste too much of their time with small talk, yet I didn't want to waste my time either. I gave it a good few minutes of convo, maybe 1 or 2 topics about them and their company before I got to me and about the reasons I was visiting their booth. Before I let Rob answer that, so it depends on the conference, because some conferences have specific career development areas. So you're meeting guys like Rob, and they're like, we want to have a conversation, but yes, we're hiring. That's why we're here. And then there are places like ITSEC or even other parts of like the GDC floor where they aren't necessarily there for those reasons. So I would say definitely having a conversation. Rob can answer some more on that question.
Yeah. Hey, Sean. Good to see you, man. Yeah, I mean, first off, I'm going to assume that, you did your homework before you went there. So hopefully the smart thing to do when you have the time is to make sure that you go on the website, find out who's going to be there, so you know who it is that you want to go talk to and everything. And then from their website whether or not they're hiring or not. So yeah, when somebody jumps right in, with the, hey, are you guys hiring? It tends to throw people off a little bit because they don't really know who you are. Why would they want to hire you even if they are looking for people, So, I usually just try to take an approach of, hi, how you doing? I'm introduce myself. It's always a good idea to find out who you're talking to. So if you're talking to a programmer or an artist or a hiring manager or a recruiter, oftentimes the questions that you're going to ask are going to be different, right? You can't talk to a recruiter about really heavy technical things because we're stupid like that. But if you're talking to a programmer, maybe you can get into something a little bit deeper. Or if you're talking to an artist, now you're in your wheelhouse, because I know you're an artist, right? So it's good to try and qualify the person that you're talking to. Showing them that you already have some knowledge of their company is a great way to start. Hey, I was looking on your website prior to the conference, and I noticed you guys are involved in doing helicopter rescues or something like that. That's a great opening right there. Maybe they have something displayed behind them that they're showing off. You can talk about that technology, or, I think Yogi Berra said you can see a lot by observing, right? So, yeah, look at what's around the booth and the things that they're proud of and that they're showing off, and maybe that'll give you a little bit of an idea of, how to break into the conversation. What Grant said is true. At ITSEC, it's a little different because a lot of people aren't necessarily there because they're hiring. So, for you to be able to strike up a conversation and talk about somebody and what they're working on and things like that, and then segue that into, finding out a little bit more about them, maybe how did they get involved with the company, and then general statements like, I'm on the market. What does your company look for in artists? What kind of technology do you guys use? Think of yourself as the salesman. Go in there and qualify that guy and that company and find out more about, a simple question like, what kind of technology do you guys use, is going to let you in on whether or not you would be a good fit for that company. And that will provide a lot more to go on. The last thing that I would say is, I think all of us are really shy and nervous about trying to talk to new people when we don't know. And once we get into a conversation, it kind of takes care of itself. Those people are there to represent their company. So their job is to try and engage with people and get them involved in what they're doing. So we walk up there with this fear of the unknown before we even get there. Oh my God, I got to talk to these people, but they're doing the same thing, So when you're at a conference and stuff like that, pretty much everybody is doing the same thing. Oftentimes, I try to cue in on, usually at ITSEC, everybody is, kind of in their same uniform, polo shirts and whatnot. But, at a lot of conferences, I'll see somebody wearing a band t-shirt that I really, really like that band. That gives me an opening. Or, I'm standing in line to get a soda or something, and I'll just say, hello, how's it going, man? How you enjoying the conference, And then the conversation will just take off from there. It usually doesn't require a lot, but think about it. Next time you go to a conference, look and see who all is going to be there before you get there, and kind of think about it before you get there.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. So we got about 7 more questions. Sean had a follow-up here. Oh, by
the way, Sean, there it is, brother. There it is. Okay. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Second part of that question is, how do you recommend having a generalized resume that can be posted on sites where multiple companies can view? Or, for example, if I was at another convention, I could hand out these to these people I was speaking with who asked for my resume. I know you're supposed to tailor your resume to the job that you are applying to, but what about when I'm turning in a resume to a career development? They say they want to forward the resume, for example. how do I make a strong resume that I can't make specific to the company and position. Yeah. So I think Rob and I would kind of agree on this one, that like we always have like your kind of generic resume, which is your strongest 100% out there resume. And that's what's on your website. That's what you give to generic posts and stuff. And then if you know you're going to apply, so for example, I have my generic one on my website. But when I went to apply to Epic, I tweaked a few things in it before I applied. So you don't want to have drastically different ones, but you kind of want to have that base one and kind of, tweak it for the different groups that you go to. But then you have that generic one that you can bring to an event. You can give to career development. You can give to whoever. I think Rob would probably agree with that. Rob, did you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. One thing though, I do know, like at career development, most, if you have a modeling resume and you have an animation resume, they should accept both and be able to differentiate if they're putting you in for something, which one needs to go. I think that's one of the hard parts, especially with an artist, and it's even getting that way more and more with programmers, that you have a specific area or discipline, and just being a generalist doesn't get looked at as much. So you kind of have to be a little bit more precise. But as long as your resume is not all over the place, I'm guessing by now, Sean, that are you a hard surface modeler or are you an animator? And then just hit hard on those. The other thing with artists is too, your online portfolio is going to be just as important. So that's going to really be where the rubber meets the road. And don't be afraid also, and this goes for devs, artists, whatever. I'm a big fan of, online portfolios and blogs. That gives you an opportunity to really go into a lot more detail about who and what you are. How does your brain work? Putting in, anecdotal stories of, how you and your team overcame this obstacle, or some new technology that you tried and the problems that you ran into, but then what you did to fix it and stuff like that. Those are great little things, if your resume really captures somebody's attention and then you back it up with like a dev blog or an art blog or something like that, man, that just really shows that you're passionate and you're into it. If you look at any of the great works of art, I use Van Gogh as the example. You see all these self-portraits that he painted of himself, and all of a sudden you come across this one and his ear is gone and it's all bandaged up and everything. Well, you think, for somebody that doesn't know the story, it's not going to be as meaningful. But once you know the story of Van Gogh and the troubles that he had and the life that he led, and then you realize what happened, okay, now, it's like you really look at that piece of art with a new appreciation. So I think, blogs and stuff like that, or at least making sure that you document what went on in each scene or modeler is really important.
Man, Rob Coble, man, he's a classy dude, pulling out the Van Gogh. I'm gonna have some philosophy bombs up in here to compete. So what's really awesome is you unintentionally answered our next question, which is from Carpenter 71285, and he said, "As a sound designer, what is the best way to format my portfolio, links, hard disk copy, etc.?" I think Rob basically answered that. A website. I can't remember the last time I reviewed a resume that had like an actual physical disc with it. It does happen, and it could be a cool way to stand out. Like if there's a company that you absolutely love, creating a cool package to send them or something. We had a writer that applied to work on Fortnite, and he ended up not working out for a bunch of reasons. We hired another guy, but he sent one of the coolest resumes I've ever seen, which is he got like a diary, and he wrote his idea for the story of Fortnite like in this diary as a survivor would have experienced the world and then he like lit parts of it on fire and burnt it and made it look like, it had been found. And he was like, I found the story, and he gave it to us. He's like, this is the story I found for your game. And so it was really cool. Like, I remember that guy. I remember his really unique storytelling ability and his way to kind of present it. So in general, I would say, have a website or a blog if you don't want to take the 5 hours it takes to set up a website, somewhere where I can go and clearly find your samples would be the most important, which is basically what Rob was just saying.
Absolutely.
So I love the person who asked this next question, not only because I worked with him for many years and he was a roommate of mine, but because he is showing you an amazing example here of a guy who's been in the industry longer than I have, who is checking in to learn, right? And I love that Rob Fortin is doing that. I know some other guys are in here that are in the industry. You can constantly be learning, constantly be checking out what other people are saying and getting tips and advice. So Rob had asked, how important is a portfolio for a developer, and what kind of things should you focus on when putting one together from a developer programmer perspective? Rob, what do you think there?
Say the question again. How important is a portfolio?
Yeah, a portfolio for a developer, for a programmer.
Yeah. So first off, let me comment on your comment about Rob being in the industry longer and yet still, getting involved in learning. I absolutely love that, man. And yeah, I think that's really cool. You've got, one of the very first big presentations I ever hosted when I was at Full Sail was with Rockstar, and Josh Bass, who's a creative director, studio head at San Diego, made the comment that if you're going to be a game, make games of any type and any discipline, you're nothing more than a full-time student for the rest of your life. And that really stuck with me because, yeah, you got to just, it doesn't end when you get your job. So anyway, good to see you, Rob. And we'll talk tomorrow for sure because I hear good things. But aside from that, I think a portfolio backs everything up, man. I think there's two ways that you can look at it. It's going to be good for you because it gives you an opportunity to show inside your mind and how it works. And a good blog or portfolio or whatever is not just necessarily I did this, look at my stuff, but it's also a great way for you to help others. And if you want to get noticed in an industry, help others. I say all the time, video game developers are the most benevolent society of people I've ever worked with, and I think that's one of the reasons I love it so much. But the people that go out of their way to help others and to give back are the ones that give notice, and those are the type of people that people like to work with too. So yeah, do it for all of those reasons. Do it because it's fun. Also, I mean, man, you'll have a one-place shop that you can send somebody to, and yeah, you can kind of brag about all the stuff that you've done, but it's going to get people thinking. It's going to stimulate conversation and get others excited about making video games. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and Rob, I would say, if you can have a section on your website or something like that that just kind of shows off the games you've worked on. I know. Unfortunately, some of the games we've worked on, the videos no longer exist. So yeah. If you go to my portfolio part of my website, you will see a bunch of dead links, which I should definitely fix at some point. But it is ultra depressing. But yeah, having an ability for me to, especially if your game is something that I've never heard of, going and looking at it is valuable for getting in the door. So we're just going to answer these last 5 questions here, and then we'll call it a night. If you guys have further questions, please write them down somewhere, save them up, and we'll try and get to them next month. So Rafael Luciano asked, for design positions, how relevant is it to include paper prototypes and analog games in a resume and portfolio? Are digital games always preferred?
I think if you have a pen and paper game or something analog that you've done and the gameplay mechanics are really solid and it's fun and people want to play it, then I would tell the world about it. You might section your portfolio so that people can find what they're looking for. These are my video games, these are my board games, these are my concepts. I mean, obviously make a portfolio or a website really easy for people to navigate and find their way around. You don't want them to have to look for anything. You want it to be real easy. But yeah, man, if you can make something really, from a psychological standpoint, if you can make a game out of, these two guitar picks right here, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'd probably want to know about it if I was looking for somebody to design. Subsequently, that's going to help you get your foot in the door. You have good ideas. Now, do you have the tech to back it up? So again, you can use that to kind of show off your knowledge in the things, but again, you're going to also need to have the technical abilities that they're looking for to back it up.
Yeah, agreed 100%. Definitely put that stuff on your resume. And exactly how Rob said to do it. Making games is making games. It's definitely a different skill, but as a designer, they're really relevant and similar. So Stephanie Rebus asked, as an artist, I am a part of the work study of a work study program. I have contributed art to master students developing games. Would you recommend listing those game titles on a resume? Yes.
Absolutely.
If you made art and it's in a game, and if the game shipped, especially, but even if the game didn't, put it on your resume. You worked on it. Like one of the big problems in the industry is that crediting sometimes is really weird. Like I've worked on a bunch of games that I'm not in the credits, and I've been in the credits of games I didn't really work on that much. So take credit for the work you do. That's really important.
In the 11 years that I was at Full Sail, I was credited or thanked on 2 games, made my year both times. So if you can get your name in a game, that's really cool. Put it on your resume or definitely let people know. Yeah.
Yeah. So next question. It's really interesting because these next few questions are kind of a little scattered. They're not necessarily part of what we were talking about here, but I wanted to hit them really quickly. So Seth Rolfe had asked, Grant, can you give me a specific example of a time that you used conflict resolution skills to improve operations or fulfill your leadership roles? Which I think he was taking this literally as like, you could interview me, but I'm going to answer it like I would an interview question, right? So as a producer, you will be asked this question at least 5 times in every interview you do. So you have to have an example ready. I have an example ready that I absolutely love. And I love it because it was something that happened to me in college. And to this day, it's really the first big example I had of conflict resolution while making a game. So it's a crazy story, but it's fun to tell. So I worked with a guy in my final project who he had some issues with things outside of his life, as well as within the team. And because of things he was doing outside of his life, it was causing conflicts within the team. And I was the project lead on that team. And so this was kind of my trial by fire. I was a young kid. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I had to solve this situation. And so the first thing I did was I sat down with him and I was like, hey man, what's going on? Because I needed to understand what was going on in his life that was causing him to be the way he was being disruptive and not working with the team, things like that. And once I understood his side of things, I was able to then get the group together, a small team of 5 guys. I was able to get the group together and we kind of talked about how we could work better as a team to make up for some of the shortcomings of the other guy because of his life, things happening in his life outside of the project. And really, I just, I wanted to air things with the team and kind of get through. Now, that isn't always the proper way to do it. But in that situation, it worked really well. We didn't talk about exactly what his problem was, but we talked about the fact that he was going through some things that we needed to compensate for. Instead of us all being angry at him, how could we support him? So that's just kind of an example of a way to answer that question. I have many examples of those, but that one is kind of a good one as an example because it was a student thing. So Brandon Vagrut, sorry, Brandon, I just butchered your last name, asked for recommended reading material for a game designer. Any recommendations for concept art and 3D modeling? So what I would tell you to do, Brandon, is to join the IGDA game design SIG and post a question in there of like, hey, do you guys have recommendations for books? I started in the industry as a game designer, but I'm not really up to speed on what's the hip book to read right now. But there's also, I believe, a book list somewhere on the IGDA website. Tanner Hancock asked, Rob, I think this question is great for you to end out on because it is kind of asking you, are there other jobs open mathematician positions?
I'm sorry, say again.
I believe he was asking specifically about your job. Other than mathematicians, what area is most plentiful that is in need for hiring at your company?
Oh, geez. Our biggest hot buttons right now, mathematicians and senior developers. We are constantly looking for entry-level developers, but it goes in spurts. So right now, I think we're pretty well set across all 3 studios on the entry. And we're trying to find some dev managers and senior, like level 3 and 4 guys. But keep an eye. Our website is always very up to date. Every.com, EVERI.com. They do a really good job of making sure that it stays current and that the positions are listed up and on there. Like every company, when you apply to a job, there's a lot of people that are applying to those jobs. So if you don't hear back right away, don't freak out. And in some cases, you might not hear back at all. It's good to try and infiltrate the companies that you're interested in and make friends with the people. The more people know you, the more they are going to look past an entry-level resume that doesn't really have a lot of real-world experience on it. And so getting to know people and networking, which could be a whole nother chat, is extremely important. So keep an eye on the website. And can I have a few minutes before we close here, Grant?
Yeah. In fact, why don't you go ahead and make sure you say your 5-step plan for success, by the way. I love that. So why don't you go ahead and close us out here, and we'll go ahead and end it out on you.
Okay. So, I just put it in the chat, but for those of you watching later and whatnot, I've developed my 5 steps that each one of these could probably be their own hour, and maybe someday we'll do that. But, first off, dream big, okay? A lot of students and entry-level people that I talk to have big dreams. They immediately think of going to Epic or Blizzard or Riot and being a lead programmer, running a dev team or something. Those are very unrealistic dreams to have, but they're good to have. But if you're going to have those types of dreams, you got to have a plan, and that's step 2, right? So what are you going to be doing from now until you have the required 5 years experience to be able to hold that position that is going to help you qualify for that position? So start thinking about your goals. Start thinking about, what do I want to accomplish this first year? What do I want to do in the first 2 years? Where do I see myself in 4 years? And then ask yourself, what am I doing today in order to make that happen? Am I learning what I need to learn? Am I making the proper contacts that I need to have in order for my career to grow? Networking is not something you do just because you need a job. It's something because you love this industry, you're passionate about it, you love what you do, and you like talking about it. So that's what networking is. Work hard, okay? Obviously, the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? 4, make friends. You can't have enough friends. know as many people as you can in the industry. Keep connected to them on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever you prefer. You know, when I get a message from somebody, you know, that I haven't talked to in a long time, maybe a former student that I worked with or something, and it's just a checking in message. You know, hey, Rob, how's it going, man? Haven't talked to you in a couple of months. Just wanted to see how you like your new job. How's things? I love that, man. And I'll tell you what, I get those messages a lot, but the messages I don't like are the ones that, you know, I haven't spoken to somebody in 4 years and all of a sudden they need a job and they're like, hey, buddy, how's it going, man? Long time. Well, I can see right through that. So it's like, well, where were you when you didn't need me? You know, I thought we were friends here, right? And that's okay. I mean, you know, that's, you know, networking is networking. You do that, right? But at the same time, be sincere, you know, check in with people from time to time and post on social media and let people know what you're up to. Let them know you're alive, man. That's why we're all on that, so we can keep in touch. Finally, so we have dream big, have a plan, work hard, make friends, and number 5, don't suck. Okay, don't be that guy. I mean, do I really need to go on any further with that? You know, be the guy that you want to work with, okay? Be courteous to people, be respectful, and to quote my good friend Grant Shonkwiler, let them know you care, okay? Let people know that you care about them, and that's the main thing. So, you know, I think, you know, I'm looking at some of the names and I recognize most of the names out there. Some people are using like gamer tags and stuff like that. You know, the other advice that I would have if you're looking for a job, use your name. Let people know who you are. I've shamelessly put my Twitter feed up there about 100 times and begged for followers. So feel free to hit me up there. If anybody has any questions or anything that I can help you with in the future, Twitter is usually the best place to find me. I love meeting new people. I love talking about the industry. I'm fortunate to have met a lot of people in the last 11 years that I still try to keep in touch with. And many of them have become really good friends. So, you know, I hope we can do the same. And if you have any questions or anything I can help you out with, don't hesitate to hit me there on Twitter. And dream big, but have a plan. Thanks, everybody. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.